Yeah, the Brewers are creating huge momentum by winning 3 straight in Atlanta. Unbelievable the way these guys have exploded offensively. Can they keep it up into the Red Series? We'll talk about that coming up next here on Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good to have you along here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Oh my God, it was such a great series with the Braves. How about that? We're going to talk about that, the Brewers explosion, and then Jeff Carr from Locked On Reds. The Brewers play the Reds this weekend. We're going to do a crossover with him and talk about this upcoming series, this big weekend series. Very important for the Reds if they want to hang in the wild card chase. And, of course, the Brewers trying to not only close on the division title, but maybe get that second seed. I'm telling you, it's becoming a reality. Brewers 16 games over the 500 mark. They have fluctuated between like 16. I don't know if they got to 17 yet this year and down to 13, over the last several weeks of the season. But the way they went in there and took 3 straight from the Braves this week, unbelievable. It looked like the Brewers were at their lowest low. So they come out and they win 10-0 on Tuesday. We're thinking, okay. I mean, I was still excited about it, but 10-0, I was like, holy cow. And they come back on Wednesday and they win 8-4. Like, man, what's gotten into these guys? 10 runs one day, 8 the next. And then they put up 16 runs. 16 runs on Thursday afternoon. 16-7 beating the Braves. I mean, they went into Atlanta. This wasn't like destroying the Marlins or the Pirates and the Pirates aren't a bad baseball team, but I'm just using them as an example, or a bad baseball team. Okay. They went in and clocked a legitimate World Series contender, the Atlanta Braves. I mean, they laid the wood to these guys. 34 runs, 3 games, 52 hits in 3 games. Reasserted themselves as, yes, they put their foot down and said, go ahead and deny us. Go ahead and doubt us. We're still leading this division. And they did it emphatically. I mean, 3 emphatic wins for these guys. 6 home runs on Thursday. By the 5th inning, they had 6 home runs. Shades of Bambi's Bombers, Harvey's Wallbangers, those crews. These guys just pounding out balls, hitting home runs. This whole series, just the multiple hitters getting multiple hits. Sal Frelick, 4-hit game. Garrett Mitchell, 3-hit game. Everybody in the lineup had a base hit on Thursday but Bryce Terang. Jackson Chourio has run his home run total to 14 on the season. Yeah, that 8-year, $82 million contract. He's playing as if that contract should be 2 years, $82 million. I mean, you look at some of the guys in baseball who are getting paid way more than him. Like a Manny Machado, okay? Manny Machado got a bonus that's half as much as what Chourio is going to earn in 8 years. Machado, what he got, about $35 million bonus? Chourio, 8 years, $82 million. Who would you rather have on your team? And how much better is Chourio? We talk about him every day, but I can't stop marveling at the guy. Can't stop marveling because he continues game after game after game, just doing things that we thought were unheard of with this guy. I mean, we thought he was going to be a great player, but he just continues on. Hit 2 home runs in the game on Thursday, becoming the youngest player at the age of 20 to hit multiple home runs in a game. The youngest player in Milwaukee baseball history, and that dates back to the Braves. He broke Henry Aaron's record, becoming the youngest player to hit multiple home runs in a game. When you're in company with Henry Aaron, I say that's pretty good company. Okay, I'm not saying Cooperstown is calling anytime soon, but Chourio is doing things, and it's just going to keep getting better. I like to think. Man, is he great. How about that? Multiple home runs, just putting this team on his back. And there's other guys. There's a lot of guys who are contributing. Again, you put up 52 hits, 34 runs in 3 games against the Braves. And that was Charlie Morton pitching. They just crushed him in the first inning. And you know what? The Brewers, what they're doing, they're in these 3 games, they're scoring early, and they're just being relentless, and they're scoring and scoring and scoring, and they're not letting up. Now, is this going to sustain? Are we going to see this continue in the Red Series? We've been around long enough with the Milwaukee Brewers that we've seen feast turn into famine real quick, but we haven't seen an offensive explosion like this in a long time. Total domination of a good baseball team like the Milwaukee Brewers did. Can they keep it up? We'll find out with the Reds coming to town. The Reds, in desperation mode, they just took 3 of 4 from the Marlins. Brewers have 7 games with the Reds between now and Labor Day. They have a 4-game set down there Labor Day weekend, and then they play the 3 here this weekend. So we'll talk about that with Jeff Carr coming up here in a little bit. Tied with the Dodgers had that off night on Thursday, but with the win, Brewers now still tied at 49 losses. I look at the loss column, 49 losses. The Dodgers had played 2 more games than the Brewers coming into the game on Thursday afternoon. Now 1 more game. So it's a half a game lead the Dodgers have on the Brewers. Dodgers have the Pirates this weekend at home at Chavez Ravine. But the Brewers with the Reds and the big long homestand. Not only the Reds. I mean, you look at the opponents they got coming in. The Reds, who are fighting for their wild card lives. You got 4 with the Dodgers next week. And then you're 7 games into the homestand. By a week from Friday, you got 3 games with Cleveland, who's 20 games over the 500 mark, leading the American League East, and is showing that they're a true World Series contender. So yeah, the Dodgers and Cleveland next week. This is going to be a tough home. We talked about this. August is going to be a tough schedule for these guys, but you got to like the way they started off. They dropped 2 of 3 to Atlanta last week. They bounced right back, and they sweep the Braves in Atlanta. Great homestand coming up. But this is just unbelievable. Murphy's Mashers, or whatever nickname you want to call these guys. Yeah, you know what? They're not like the Harvey Wallbangers. They don't have the home run hitters those guys have, or Bambi's Bombers. But it's sure fun watching them doing all the great things that we want a team to. Getting a guy on, getting him over, getting him in, playing fundamentally sound offensive baseball, and plus hitting the big home runs. Willy Adames, 3 home runs in the series. Willy Adames continues, and he could very well play for the Braves next year. He might be on the Braves. The Braves looking for a shortstop. That might be their guy. So, but we'll worry about that in the offseason. But do you think of the young guys who've come through this organization, younger than, at the time, than Chourio? Gary Sheffield was 19 when he played the Brewers. Robin Yount was 18 when he played with the Brewers. Neither one of those guys have done what Chourio has done, and that is hit 2 homers. Youngest player in not only Milwaukee Brewers history, but Milwaukee baseball history. Hit multiple homers in 1 game. Man, 14 on the season. On pace to 25 maybe? Who knows? All right. Going to bring in Jeff Carr right now. He's going to bring me in. We did a crossover. We talked about this series. The Reds are struggling. I picked the Reds to win this division. Certainly, I didn't think the Reds were going to be. They're probably the most disappointing team in the division. I expected more from them, but it's not going to be an easy out. To think that these 3 games are going to be easy for the Milwaukee Brewers, I wouldn't go there. We'll get to our segment with Jeff Carr coming up right now.
Well, they say the only profession that you can be more wrong than the weatherman is when you're a sportscaster. And I was certainly wrong about the NL Central this year. In fact, I think Chuck might have even been wrong too. Hi, what's up? My name is Jeff Carr. I am the host of the Locked On Reds podcast. I'm alongside Chuck Freeman, the host of the Locked On Brewers podcast, and we are going to get you ready for the Reds and Brewers series up in Milwaukee coming up this weekend. 3 games starting on Friday night. And quite frankly, this series means a lot different of meanings than I thought it would a couple of months ago. I thought that the Reds would be vying for the top of the division. I thought that the Brewers would be probably close to them. This would be a dogfight, something like that. It's anything but that. We're going to get into what this series means for both teams. We're also going to break down the matchups that you can expect, the pitching matchups and things like that. Some hitters who are hot, some hitters who are not, and what you can expect from these 3 games. And then later on in the show, want to break down one of the most rarest things that you will ever see, and that is an in-division trade, the one that sent Frankie Montas to the Brewers for Jacob Junis and Joey Wiemer to the Reds. That's all coming up on today's Locked On Reds, Locked On Brewers crossover that is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team, your Reds, your Brewers, every single day. And today we are brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. And Chuck, where we want to start today with is, my goodness, man, like, I couldn't have been more wrong about the Brewers. And in fact, I say that even as like a few weeks ago. Like a few weeks ago, I kept saying, boy, they're going to fall off. They're going to fall off. And I think I was in a corner in a straitjacket saying, the Brewers are going to fall off. And they're not. In fact, the Dodgers and the Phillies are now looking over their shoulders at them. Like, this is crazy, dude.
Yeah, well, long as we're in confession here, same thing with you guys. I hear about it. Chuck, you picked the Reds to win the division. Where are they now? I hear it from the great Brewers fans all the time. I heard that when I go to the ball games, I see them walking around too. So, yeah, I mean, it's just been an unbelievable season so far. And yeah, I think a lot of us have thought that, well, you know, the other shoe is going to drop. The injuries are going to catch up to them and everything. This team is not that talented. The Brewers have been able to plow through all that and now, you know, sit with a substantial lead in the division and tied with the Dodgers in the loss column. Each got 49 losses for that second seed, that a very important second seed. But man, I tell you, Jeff, I thought it'd be reversed. I thought when you looked at the schedule, I thought at this point we'd be the team that'd be 5 games or so out of the wild card chase instead of the 6.5 that the Brewers are up in the division. But I'll gladly take it. I'll gladly take it so far. And I'll tell you one thing though, anything can happen. You and Steven, don't give up hope yet, man. I know there's a lot of teams in front of you, but I wouldn't. I still. You got some talent there, and I wouldn't look at rebuild just yet.
No, and it's so funny because I think that, you know, we fell into the trap coming into this season where we thought that, you know, all progress is linear, and the fact that they won 82 games last year, they're probably going to win more this year, and it just doesn't work out that way because it's baseball, and not everything is linear. It's not all a given thing. And we saw that there was more evidence of it when the Reds were in Miami for 4 games. They faced the Marlins. They win 3 out of 4, but the one that they lost, it was just there were 2 things that happened, Chuck, and quite frankly, if both of these things happen, the Brewers will win a given game. If a Brewers fan is looking at the Reds and they say, okay, how can we get at the Reds? Number 1, you beat up their starting pitcher. And number 2, you hold Ellie in check. Because if Ellie doesn't do something, and if the starting pitching isn't just absolutely dominating, then this team loses. I think it's 100% of the time. I got to go back through the schedule and make sure that that's a thing. But in my mind, like if you don't get good starting pitching and if Ellie is not hitting, the Reds don't win. And that's what they are here in the year 2024. They've just not got great performances from the supporting cast. Hopefully that's something that changes for 2025. But as we move toward the end of 2024, there are a lot of guys that we're looking at and being like, who is the most disappointing Red? Unfortunately, that list is a lot longer than I expected it to be.
Well, I'm surprised. Ellie, he's hitting like 263 or so on the season. I feel like every time I turn the TV set, like tonight on Thursday night, turn the game on, And every time I put it on the package, Ellie got a base hit. I'm like, I every time I see Ellie, I say, how is he batting 263? He must be batting like 500 every time I see him. He's on base doing stuff and all that. Yeah, he's a nightmare when he comes here because he's a nightmare for the Milwaukee Brewers because you just don't know what he's going to do. He's just amazing. But yeah, I'm just surprised that things have gone as south as they are to the Reds. Certainly, I mean, are they talking about? They're not giving up hope just yet, are they? Are they throwing in the towel? Are they going to bring the September call-ups, and that's going to happen? That playoff drought I thought was going to break this season. I thought this was going to be the year that and it still might, but I thought this was going to be the year that playoff drought for the Reds was going to come to an end.
No, they're definitely not going to call up a bunch of folks. In fact, that was something Nick Kroll had said the other day, is that he didn't just want to bring up young players just for the sake of bringing them up, because he still believed that there was a chance this team could get back into it. And as much as I love that competitive fervor that he has, and as much as I love the messaging that we're hearing from players and things like that, it certainly feels like every time I look at the standings for the last 3 months, the Reds are 5 games out of the wild card. They never get much farther, but they also don't get any closer. And as much as they have chances here and there to make up some ground and to beat some teams that maybe they should be able to catch up some ground with, they just can't ever seem to completely take advantage of those opportunities. Meanwhile, they're looking up at a Brewers side that, I don't know, man. Like, at this point, I'm just looking at the Brewers and I'm saying, how? Like, I mean, is anybody else competing with Pat Murphy for Manager of the Year at this point? Because I cannot believe that there would be.
No, but there was been times when we thought that Craig Counsell was going to get Manager of the Year, and despite the numerous great runs that he never won Manager of the Year. But I don't know how you don't give it to Murphy with everything that has gone on. I mean, you talk about it. They've had so many injuries. They've started 17 different starting pitchers. 17 different guys have started a game for the Brewers. They've used a total of 34 pitchers this year. It's amazing. And some of those guys are on different teams right now. And then they come up here for a cup of coffee or two, like Dallas Keuchel, and then next thing you know, they've released him. It's just been amazing because, like I said earlier, every time I think that this team is going to go away, like they had just lost 6 of 9. And then they come back against the Braves and they go to Atlanta and they sweep the Braves. And not only
smashed them.
They did. They scored, I wrote it down, 52 hits, 34 runs in 3 games. Amazing. But the thing about this team is the Brewers could do something like that, but they could come right back and score 3 runs in 5 games. And that's just the way they are, depending on the day. But I haven't seen an offensive explosion quite like this with the Milwaukee Brewers. But I said they had to take 2 or 3 from the Braves. I didn't think they'd sweep the series, but here they are, and they righted a few wrongs this past week. I'll tell you, with the Reds, I think anybody, if you're a Brewers fan, you look at, if you're thinking, well, the Brewers are going to come in or the Reds are going to come in, the Brewers are just going to keep this momentum going. I'll tell you, the Reds are going to, those divisional opponents, everybody in baseball, but those divisional opponents, these are 3 tough games for the Brewers this weekend.
That's true. And I did see the series sweep in Atlanta for the Brewers and thought, oh boy, here we go. Perfect scenario for the Brewers to just roll over the Reds and really solidify their spot at the top of the division. And quite frankly, there are some interesting matchups, including a TBD on the mound. And for once, it's not the Reds that have a TBD on the mound. That we'll explain those matchups all coming up next. Before we do that, though, I want to tell you about one of today's sponsors, and that is Liquid IV. Look, we are in the dog days of summer, but we're also to the point where it's like, man, the days are getting shorter. We know that the temperatures are going to start dropping here soon, so we want to get outside. We want to have some fun in the sun, but you better stay hydrated. Liquid IV is the perfect way to stay hydrated each and every day, all throughout the rest of the summer. I take this with me all the time to the golf course. Like I love, there's certain points in my game where it's just like, man, oh man, I need some water, but Liquid IV will hydrate you as well as 2 bottles of water. Plus, they've got a lot of great flavors. You got classics like lemon, lime, and raspberry and things like that. But they've also got these great summer flavors like Popsicle Firecracker that combines the citrus and the berry flavors for an awesome taste. Yes, that's right. When you combine Liquid IV with your water, you get a great taste, but you also get doubly hydrated. Check out Liquid IV today. Go to liquidiv.com and use code MLB for 20% off your first order. Again, that is liquidiv.com and use the promo code MLB for 20% off your first order. Stay hydrated for the rest of the summer and for the rest of the year with Liquid IV. And when it comes to keeping your ride or die alive, you need eBay Motors, because they've got all of the parts that your car will ever need, and they've got some great prices for you as well. I mean, we're talking about superchargers. We're talking about roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. They've got over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. And we're talking about, you know, the parts that you need to like fix something, or the parts that you need to upgrade something as well. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, that part that you order is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car that MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Thanks for making Locked On Reds and Locked On Brewers your first listen here today. For your second listen, go check out Locked On MLB. Paul Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, brings you the news of the day as we head down the stretch toward the playoffs with his signature humor and gets you ready for the Fall Classic. Check out Locked On MLB wherever you get your podcasts, and including on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. All right, Chuck, we've kind of set the stage so far as where our two teams sit. Let's look specifically at some matchups. We'll start with the pitching matchups, because here on Friday night, we've got a bit of an interesting one. The Brewers, and for my money, I know that his statistics haven't necessarily wowed everybody, but the Brewers made a very savvy trade this season to get Aaron Civale from the Rays. I liked Aaron Civale when he was a Cleveland Guardian. I know that he's moved around a little bit because of injuries and things like that, but he's healthy now, and he's a pretty solid pitcher. Meanwhile, for the Reds, you've got Carson Spires, who is going. Carson Spires really wasn't a guy that I expected to take hold of a starting position for the Reds, but he has, and he has done so in a very nice way. He's not going to come out and just mow down the side, but he's going to keep you in the ball game. I think that this Friday night matchup will be pretty well pitched.
Civale has not got a win in his 5 or 6 starts with the Brewers so far. And I think if we had to start the postseason, if there was a 7-game series, he would not be a starter for the Milwaukee Brewers. He would not have cracked that rotation. I think he'll be used out of the bullpen, long relief probably, no matter what it is. But he's on the outside looking in as far as a 4-man rotation, I would say, right now, especially by picking up Montes. But Civale's got to go. He's had a couple of nice outings. He's had a couple of other games where you just shake your head at. His best outing was several weeks ago, about 3 or 4 weeks ago against Skeens. Skeens pitched a no-hitter. Civale took a no-hitter into the 8th inning. Civale pitched pretty good, probably his best outing, but got a loss for it because the Pirates had won it 1-0. But he's a guy who can be had. I have not been impressed. I expected more out of Civale too. And I agree, Jeff. I thought he got healthy. Let's see what he could do. Change of scenery. So far, unimpressed. A lot of Brewer fans and guys and ladies who follow the podcast say, we need to get Civale out of that rotation. And they even want him DFA'd. I wouldn't go that far, but I'd still keep him in the rotation. But I don't see him starting a game in the postseason, though.
Why do we as baseball fans do that? I feel like a couple of years ago, all of us baseball fans collectively learned the term DFA. So if somebody does anything wrong, we're like, DFA him! DFA him!
Used to be sent down to the minors. Now people just want to get rid of the guy. Just DFA him, cut him.
Just get rid of him.
And we want to do it with guys who are making $20 million a year too. Let's DFA him. Let's pay him. But I don't want to see him anymore.
Sometimes you get down to the nitty gritty of like the reasoning behind that, and it's like, I don't want to see his face. I don't like his face anymore. And you're like,
oh yeah, all right. There's been a few of those guys around here too. Yeah.
Been a few. And then you go to Saturday. Saturday is going to be a very interesting matchup because you've got Nick Martinez, who has been a relief pitcher. Honestly, his best role this season for the Reds has been out of the bullpen. He has been a very good relief pitcher. He's been a starter at times. He's been very up and down being a starter. Did a very good job at the beginning of the Marlins series, but again, we're talking about the Marlins. We're talking about a quadruple A team here that decided to trade everybody on their major league roster. So they're going to give him another start. And with that, he's going to face Tobias Myers. And I know that Tobias Myers has had quite the season because I constantly see him on, like my fantasy baseball waiver wire or something like that. And they're just like, man, you might want to look at picking this guy up. And I'm like, man, I don't know, but he just keeps on pitching well.
He does. They brought him up, and he's been a journeyman minor leaguer. They brought him up here and to make a couple of spot starts, and they figured, well, we'll keep him up here until other players get healthy, and then we'll send him down. Now you can't take him out of the rotation. He's the guy I believe could start a postseason game for the Milwaukee Brewers. He very well could, but he's been terrific so far, going out and giving quality starts. Sometimes we go with the home run ball a little bit more than I'd like, but he's been solid, a lot better than I thought. Again, a guy who's just bounced around. Sometimes Brewers have a few of those guys, including Colin Ray. But the Brewers have with Myers, a guy who's been very solid so far. And again, a guy you can count on in that starting rotation. And one of the reasons why the Brewers are 16 games over the 500 mark, because they been able to plug in Myers into the rotation. And he's giving you 5 or 6 innings.
I saw Ray was facing the Brewers the other day, and the first thing I thought of was, well, good. The Reds don't have to face Colin Ray. But I also threw a few bucks on that because they had the Brewers as the underdog in that game. And, well, the Brewers swept the Braves, so obviously that was a pretty decent bet on my part. But, yeah, I think that Myers has been a guy, like, as I've watched the Brewers this season, that I constantly kept thinking, man, it's just not fair. That whole I can't remember if it was Jesse Pinkman or not, but it was the actor who played Jesse Pinkman, and he did that whole scene. He was like, he can't keep getting away with this. I feel like that with the Brewers because they traded away Corbin Burns, and it's just like, you trade away Corbin Burns, how do you still have this kind of a team? And Tobias Myers is one of the many reasons as to why they are still here.
But it's one of the reasons why I think that people aren't, like you might say, maybe not 100% confident in these guys, because it's like, here we are, getting to the middle part of August coming up here, and still they keep chugging along with these guys, continue to hold their own, the Colin Rays and the Tobias Myers of the world, and continue to be productive. And they plug in Andrew Monasterio in there, and he just gets, he can be sitting on the bench for 2 weeks and comes up, has a 2 or 3 hit game. So that's been the story. It's been a bunch of guys yet nobody's ever heard of around baseball, but are making some noise. Now, whether that's going to last in the postseason, that remains to be seen.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see once you get to October there. And
Jeff, one thing about Martinez, how come he's starting? Why isn't he in the bull? Another guy who I think you said bullpen guy. Why is he starting? Why didn't they keep him in the bullpen?
So a big thing with that is the way that this Reds starting rotation has kind of been in flux here recently, especially with some guys who you kind of need to manage their workload for the season. They kind of had him pitch whenever Graham Ashcraft went on the IL. Carson Spires essentially took Graham Ashcraft's spot in the rotation because initially they were sending down Graham Ashcraft because he had not pitched well this season and they were going to work on some stuff. And somewhere along the way, we joked about it on the pod where, somewhere between Cincinnati and Louisville, he went through some sort of MRI and found out he had an injury to his elbow. And so they shut him down, and he's probably not going to pitch at all for the rest of the season. Not Tommy John. It was something else. But to that effect, the Reds kind of have a spot in their rotation. And I thought that they were going to give a shot to a guy that's really been shooting up the minor leagues for the Reds, but so far they have not done that. And with Nick Martinez being named the starter on Saturday, that's just another confirmation that they're not going to give, his name is Julian Aguiar, they're not going to give Julian Aguiar a shot, at least here in Milwaukee. I kind of don't begrudge them that point because I feel like that would be a tough situation to bring him into. But yeah, that's kind of how that's gone. And speaking of the load management thing, one of the reasons I think Nick Martinez is going to continue to get a look as a starting pitcher is a guy like Nick Lodolo, who's starting on Sunday for the Reds. I would think, and I was trying to look and see if this was like said anywhere, but I haven't seen it like written down. But I gotta believe that they're like shooting for 150 innings with him. He's already at 103. 103 and a third innings is the most that he has ever pitched in the major leagues, and that was 2 years ago. Last year, he dealt with injuries all season, only pitched 34 in the third innings. So you can't imagine that he's going to get a ton more. But he is slated to start here on Sunday. This is the TBD game for Milwaukee. And we always like to joke that TBD is a really solid lefty that's got a nice breaking ball. But who do you expect to actually be pitching here on Sunday for Milwaukee?
TBA. We won't know until Sunday morning. That's the way that Murphy has operated, because in the media, we'll ask him Saturday after the game, who's pitching tomorrow? Oh, I don't know. We'll figure it out tomorrow. He knows. He's just not going to tell us. Could be Joe Ross. Could be Bryce Wilson. It could be one of those names right there. They could have an opener and then have one of those guys go. So that's the way the Brewers operate. You won't know until Sunday morning. You get to the game and, he's pitching. Okay, good to know. There's been a lot of that this year.
Man, I hate to throw my hat in for the guy, but I mean, he came into a heck of a situation with Greg Counsell jumping ship, and I can't throw my hat in for any other manager than Pat Murphy getting that award this year. I just can't imagine it. But I tell you this, though, the interesting part about this is that his whole pitching equation was made easier by the Reds in a weird in-division trade that we don't really see very often. I kind of want to break that down a little bit. Frankie Montas to the Brewers and what all that did for the Brewers the rest of the season, coming up next.
PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Over 5 million active members. Unlike other apps, PrizePicks, you against the number. You like playing daily fantasy sports like a lot of us do. Hey, man, it's you. All you have to do is pick more or less 2 to 6 player stat projections. Let's say you like Adames has been on a home run for the Milwaukee Brewers. So you have 3 home runs in the Braves. Maybe you like him. You get good odds. You like him to go over, and you like somebody else to maybe less on base hits or so. The Brewers have been on such a run offensively. You would have to say maybe there's going to be some regression. Any way you want to work it, you need to get in all the action with your friends and become a PrizePicks community today. Start the winnings rolling into your bank account today. You could win up to 100 times your money. You could turn as little as 4 picks, $10 into $1,000. Very easy, very good to do. And all you have to do is download the app today. Download PrizePicks. Download the app. Use that promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That first deposit match going to match up to $100. Again, use that promo code LOCKEDONMLB. LOCKEDONMLB. PrizePicks. That first deposit match up to $100. Pick more or less. It's that easy. But hey, all you need to do is put down maybe $10 in. You could turn that into $1,000. Just pick anywhere between 2 to 6 player stat projections. Watch those winnings roll in, but you can't win unless you download that PrizePicks app today.
You can catch every pitch of the Reds and Brewers hometown broadcasts with SiriusXM. All you got to do is you download the SXM app and you search Reds or Brewers, and you can take your favorite team's home broadcast with you anywhere. I know that, certain apps allow you to do so within a certain mile radius of the city or whatever like that. Sirius isn't like that. You do that wherever you go. And we want to close out today's show talking about, the Frankie Montas trade that sent the Reds opening day starter to the Brewers. And quite frankly, Chuck, when I saw this news, it was super surprising because not only are in-division trades rare, but also the idea of trading Frankie Montas really wasn't in my mind. Like, Frankie Montas has had kind of an up and down season. He's had some really good starts. He had a start in Colorado where I think he set the record for fewest hits allowed by a visiting pitcher. He allowed 1 hit. Obviously, Rockies have never been no hit at home, so there you go. But he's also had some other starts where he threw 40 pitches. I remember succinctly there were two different starts where he threw 40 pitches in the first inning, and he would only last 2 or 3 innings in those starts. And so you were thinking, what is this guy? What's going on with him? Quite frankly, he has shown that he's healthy. I don't think it's a question of health after he dealt with the, shoulder surgery that he had a couple of years ago. But I also wonder a little bit, like, what is his longevity like? I hope the best for him. I hope that he gets a chance to really pitch well in the postseason here. But this trade just, it shocked me. I can't imagine that you had much of a different reaction.
It is. I was surprised. I did a double take when I got the alert on my phone. It was like, they made a trade with the Reds, same division. Yeah. Just odd. He's come out and he's in both games that he's pitched in so far, hasn't pitched great, but the Brewers have backed him offensively. They scored 8 runs for him last Friday night. They scored 16 on Thursday. So they're scoring some runs for him so far. He only pitched 4 innings in Thursday's game, but just a little surprised. Again, another guy who's going to be fighting for a spot to start in the postseason. I don't have him starting a game right now. We'll see, but they needed some length. Number one, they needed someone to give him some length. He didn't give him length on Thursday. He did last Friday. We're going to give him a few more starts. Now, in return, in this trade, you guys got Joey Wiemer, who Brewer fans were not sad to see him go because they were just so frustrated with him. What you're going to get here, Jeff, with Joey Wiemer, a guy who's got a lot of athletic ability. He's going to play center field or any position you want. He's going to run like the wind, but his batting stance, when you check him out, you're going to say, wow, he's got a big hitch in his swing that I cannot believe at this point of his career, nobody has corrected yet. They tried here in the off season in spring training. It still looks like a mess, but if you guys can correct that, who knows? He's got a lot of untapped talent. You just got to be able to find it.
He's definitely got all kinds of opportunity. I mean, this outfield, it's going to be a huge topic for us all off season long. How do the Reds fix it? Mm-hmm. How do they set it up so that it is consistent, or at least give yourself a platoon? Because I mean, even my guy, Will Benson, I love Will Benson to death, but like, he has not given me a lot of performances to go on for next year. There's been games, but they're few and far between. There's lots of space in between where he's striking out a ton. I think he still has the highest strikeout rate among qualified hitters in the major leagues and things like that. So there's plenty of opportunity for Joey Wiemer if he can figure it out. And the thing that I saw a lot of people say that absolutely got me excited is that he is an elite defender. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, you cannot say that about most players on this Reds team. I mean, sure, you've got your few and far between guys, but if you can put him in center field and then maybe put TJ Friedel in one of the corner outfield spots, then you really only have to worry about, left field or something like that and how you develop one more corner outfielder. Is it Spencer Steer? Is it somebody else? And that's going to be the thing that really interests me the most about this trade. Jacob Junis, I did see. I mean, I think he's got a team option for next season. And his first impression hasn't been that great with Cincinnati's first couple of appearances. He's given up some runs and not looking all that great out of the pen. But his most recent appearance against the Marlins looked like he was starting to get right a little bit. Hopefully he can give them some stabilization out of the bullpen, but I really think that's all they're looking for in this. I think the reason, and you featured him when you were talking about who the Reds are getting back, I think the reason the Reds did this is because they got Joey Wiemer, a guy who definitely has his warts at the plate, but the Reds fans almost immediately, whenever we saw this trade and we saw the package that the Reds were getting back, we're just like, that guy homered a couple of times against the Reds last year. Okay, maybe this is all right. Plus, you're getting a Bearcat. I mean, you get a Bearcat coming back home to Cincinnati. That's always a good thing.
Now, when you guys traded starting pitching, I mean, everybody's looking for starting pitching.
Yeah.
And at the time, you're still a contender. And you talked about trading. The Brewers were in need of some length, as I was talking about. When you saw that trade initially, you were saying, are we throwing in the towel here by trading our opening day starter? Were you thinking that at all, Jeff?
Maybe a little bit. There's an element of me that is just surprised that it was Montas. I didn't think that there were a lot of guys you could trade on this team because most of the Reds core and most of the Reds roster is super young and super controllable. So it'd be very hard to trade for any of them. And if they weren't playing up to snuff, if they weren't performing the way that we thought they would, then they wouldn't have much trade value anyway. So I didn't think there were a lot of guys that could be traded. But I also don't know, other than the fact that you open up that rotation spot, and quite frankly, Nick Martinez is pitching probably where Frankie Montas would have been. Other than that, I don't think that it was throwing in the towel with this one trade. Most of the trade deadline for the Reds, the moves that they made, you can point to them and say, well, you're not buying, but you're also not selling. Like they were like half in, half out of everything with all the moves that they did. So it was one of those deals that I was kind of like, it fit the season. I'll tell you that.
It's just, I think, Jeff, it's just a bizarre division. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, St. Louis, like, they're technically in it, but are they really? And, you know, you never get caught at the Cardinals. The Cubs, I think people expect it more. The Pirates kind of hanging in there for the Pirates. And, you know, you guys, you know, probably, let's face it, maybe the most disappointing team in the division on my part, because I expected this was going to be a year that they broke the playoff drought. But who knows? We got 6-7 weeks left of the regular season here, and I've seen some crazy things happen. I'm not sewing up the division just yet for the Milwaukee Brewers because there was a long way to go. As great as these last 3 days were, as we know here, being a Brewer fan, that could turn in a heartbeat.
It's so crazy, and this is such a tightly contested division. I mean, so looking at the schedule, you know, there's 3 games here in Milwaukee. There's a 4-game series that is in Cincinnati coming up next month, and then that's it for the Reds and the Brewers this season,
weekend, right?
Yeah. So it's a nice long division series there, but at the end of the day, like this kind of feels like a must win for the Reds, and I don't know that they're going to get it done. I would love to sit here and say that they would, but
a great
I don't have a good feeling.
A great manager once said, and you can relate to this guy, I remember him saying it, Sparky Anderson said, if you got games left with that team and you're within range of that team, you always got a shot. And I remember he was manager of the Tigers, and he was in the Brewers he was in the Tigers locker room, and they were trying to chase down, I forgot who. And he said, if you have games left and you're within range, you always got that. And he did it in a Sparky Anderson tone. One of the great managers of all time. But yeah, I remember him saying that. So I'm thinking right now, you talk about the 7 games, still within that range, never give up.
That, I think, is the perfect way to end today's crossover. Thank you, Chuck. I appreciate you getting to talk to you always. Looking forward to this weekend. Gonna be an interesting series. I know that the Brewers have dominated the Reds in series over the last few years. We'll see if that can turn around. I don't have a lot of faith in it, but it's going to be fun for 3 games. I'm sure of it. I don't think there's going to be any blowouts in this one. I think that's going to be some tightly contested games. And for the series recaps on both these, or for both sides, make sure you check out Locked On Reds and Locked On Brewers coming up on Monday as we look back at these 3 games.
Jeff, I'll say real quick for Reds fans, and you're going to get a lot of Reds fans coming into Milwaukee. You guys are great fans, unlike those Cardinals or Cubs fans. We love the Reds fans. But the Wisconsin State Fair was going on right down the road, let's say about a mile. Traffic is heavy. When the Brewers are playing and the State Fair was going on, it's the final weekend of that. Milwaukee's going to be very, very busy. Hotel rates are up. Go ahead, get your hotels early, man, because with the State Fair going on, there's a few things going on in Milwaukee. So it's going to be a busy weekend besides the Brewers and Reds.
Go ahead and get down to the ballpark a little bit early. You can get a brat and you can get an extra beer for you.
There we go.
You know.
I might run into you.
Exactly.